just a quick introduction. Wendy, as I mentioned, is the Chief Learning Officer at the Air Education and Training Command in San Antonio, Texas, right? Nice. So you're in San Antonio. Great Mexican food there. I have been. They have great food. And she helps cultivate a robust culture of learning within the Air Force, has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public administration from Sonoma State University, and a doctorate in education leadership from Frostburg State University, and 30 years of public service. So thank you for those 30 years. That's remarkable. And we're excited to hear and learn from you today. Alongside Peter, who is an author and citizen of Cincinnati. He is the founder of Design Learning, which is a training company delivering training solutions based on his books, many of which hopefully some of you have read. Flawless Consulting, The Answer to How is Yes. Community, which is part of what we'll be talking about today, and his most recent book, Activating the Common Good. So, and if you're like myself, you've been touched by Peter's words, and even more so touched by others who've been touched by Peter's words and works, and the opportunity to take what you've read and heard and kind of bring it into the space, your own communities. So it's exciting to get to hear from both of you today, a little bit more around how that works. So it's just a conversation. We'll chat for a while, and then towards the end of our time, we'll leave space for us to reconnect in our groups. And also, if you have questions, give an opportunity for that as well. So with that, I'll kind of start off with, just an intro question for Peter and for you, Wendy, around something that Peter just said, which is connection is the point, right? And as you think about that kind of mindset, Wendy, how have you brought that into the Air Force, right? Which may or may not feel like a place where it would, for some of us who aren't within that realm every single day. It seems like the idea of community. What does that look like for your organization, for the people that you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it is interesting, kind of the ideas that we have about an organization before we really know an organization, sort of like the ideas we have about a person before we really know the person, before we get to spend time with the person. I would have never thought the United States Air Force would be the very best organization and community that I ever had the pleasure of working with. And I can tell you right now, my reality, that's my truth. It is the very best place I've ever worked in my entire life. The people who are here are amazing. They're some of the smartest people that I've met, the most thoughtful people. There's a real care for education and learning. So being the learning officer is a great place. It's great to be in a place where your position is something that's valued by the organization. It makes it easier. And there are times where I've worked in organizations where it hasn't been that easy. So it's kind of an easy time, but it's also very challenging, the connection term. We have over 700,000 members of the United States Air Force. If you include the active duty, the officers, enlisted, the Guard, the Reserve, and the civilians, nearly 700,000 people. That's a lot of people to connect with and to know. And people are at various stages and experiences in their lives where they're going through wonderful happiness and tragedy and all kinds of different things, and still trying to do what they do to achieve that mission, that airman's creed, to have that unbreakable trust with each other. And it's very challenging. And sometimes it feels that the trust is broken at times, that there is an us and them mentality at times. And I'll hear those narratives, not only from the enlisted or the civilians or the Guard and Reserve, but even the leaders. Everyone has those moments where maybe they're just moments of reality where they don't feel connected. And so what are some things that we can do to revector ourselves, to reignite ourselves? And I think conversations is a way to do that. I once had a friend who was really into like the meals that people eat and all the different ways that people create food. And he was always like, if you share a meal, then that's the way to really foster connection. And I think that's true, although I've eaten some things I didn't really care for so much. I feel that way about dialogue, though. If I get a chance that I'm the talker, I'm the person in the elevator who's not going to sit there silent. I want to know, I want to connect with people, and I really do care for people. And so I'm probably going off on a tangent, but I think that one, the Air Force is an amazing place. It's got an incredible mission. Our mission is to protect the United States of America, our values, our democracy. It's about really protecting the community. Our first mission is to deter war, to deter conflict from happening. So thinking about how do you deter conflict? Well, usually you have to be pretty good at understanding people. You have to be pretty good at having situational awareness. Uh, Helps if you're pretty good at having compassion, empathy, and all these sorts of things. I don't think people think about that when they think about a military organization. But our first goal is to deter conflict. And then to be ready if conflict does occur to protect what's most valuable to our nation. And so we're doing both of those at once. And how do we do that? We do that through a doctrine of mission command. And mission command is another thing. And I want to give Peter time to talk too, but I've been so blown away at how aligned the different conversations are to build community, and how aligned those are with mission command. Because mission command is understanding kind of the intent, understanding the content of the intent of the commander, but having the autonomy to actually do what your role is, what you've promised to do for the organization, to be as competent as you can, to hold the greatest amount of character, and to connect with other people to get that done. We really have a diffusion of people expected to know what their role is and to be able to do that, and then to work together. So it does take a lot of us working together to understand each other. The Air Force has over 200 different career fields. So we're teaching people how to be defenders, military police. We're teaching people how to be attorneys, to be doctors, nurses. We're teaching people all kinds of to be maintainers, mechanics of aircraft, to do logistics. We're teaching them all kinds of different things, and all of their jobs are critically important for us to deter, and then, if needed, to defend. So it's a pretty large organization, and the connection really matters. So I hope to be a good steward. I share the book, the Community Building Structures of Belonging, with every new wing commander that comes into command. We always talk about leadership and the things that are challenging, the strengths and gifts that each wing commander might have. And at the end, we always agree that practicing conversations is really important, and not something that we make time to do that often. Mm-hmm. That was a lot. So I feel like I should be quiet for a minute and listen now.
What you just said, it's not that we don't take time for conversation. We don't act as if they matter. And what strikes me when you start by saying that as soon as I joined the Air Force, the first thing I do is make a commitment to my colleagues.
Yeah.
And that's pretty amazing. So if we took that seriously, we would treat connection and conversation as if it's the point. That the way I deter harm is through conversation. Now, the world thinks I deter it through military spending, but inside the Air Force, and I'm reminded that the field of organization development got started by the Navy. That 30, 40 years ago, when we were starting and imagining that there'd be a world like this, it was the military that were first ones interested. And Fort Ord, I think of maybe the Army, had the first OD school that I knew of.
Wow.
Before Pepperdine, before NYU. And why? He said because they knew that our trust in each other is the center of everything that matters to us. And of course, the outside world doesn't get that, or we commercialize it or whatever. But I think it's so my thought is maybe even I haven't taken connection and conversation as if it mattered enough. I thought it was nice. I thought it was useful from time to time. And mostly, I think it may be the point. And then from time to time, we can, and to me, the conversation with the stranger is what I'm looking for. That's why I'm hyper allergenic to like-minded. I want to be with strangers. I want to fall in love with a stranger. The word hospice, hospitality, means the welcoming of a stranger. And I don't buy the notion that we're divided. I think what you embody, and probably most people on this call, is the fact that it's not who divided is not who we are. It's just the way we talk about ourselves for other reasons. And to me, this is the methodology of welcome. That organization development, the things you're doing, change the conversation, change the culture. They're really about welcoming the stranger and being curious instead of having something in mind for them. And one thing you said that's very powerful to me, Wendy, is you say you're consumed by your own curiosity. You've made quite a claim that you are actually interested in other people. Oh my God. Save me, Jesus. You know, I would never make that claim. So thank God that people like you. And I believe you. And so what we represent, and the challenge is every moment we have to embody that as best we can, even on a call. That's why we start with a song. And we asked Wendy, what song would you like to begin with? And we played the song she begins with. And then we start with a pause and we go to a conversation first. So you know there's 3 other people that you came to be with. And then you put up with Wendy and I because that's part of the deal. And anyway, you said a lot, Wendy, and I appreciate it. What shape do you actually engage people? And give me one moment that embodies how you engage people with each other. Not what course you're teaching, not what protocols you use for commanders, but what, give us a little slice out of a moment that matters to you when you're working with people. Say, try it now.
So many slices. So I will share a slice of an experience that just happened yesterday. It was a holiday yesterday, Labor Day. And on my personal phone, I got a text from an airman. And the airman wrote me to tell me that he was in San Antonio. And might I have a chance to get a dinner with him and another airman? That to me feels like, yes, 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 yes.
Wow.
I want to make that work. And so we did. And it was filled with all kinds of craziness, as a lot of things are. But my first answer was yes. And I love that the slice I'm sharing with you is a slice of connection and accessibility. I want to be accessible. I want learning to be accessible. I want to be available. Not that at a sacrifice to my family, to my health, things like that, of course. There's a balance. But the fact that someone would reach out to me. And so we went and had a dinner. I thought we were meeting a mile away, but I put the wrong pin into the text. So we ended up driving 15 minutes away from each other to get together in a pouring rainstorm. And so then when we came together, I had to ask for, forgiveness, 1, for being late, and 2, for putting the wrong pin in. But then the dialogue that we had, they're here to assess some of our innovation efforts. But we didn't talk about that. We talked about camping trips and about red ants biting you. How do they get into your tent when you don't even see a mound? We talked about the values of how important is a promotion and money. And what if it's not that important? Is that wrong if you're a husband and a father? We talked about all kinds of different things that are super important. And that's just 2 out of the 700,000. And I don't have too many of those, but whenever I can, I want to have those. Sometimes because of the organization chart, people are nervous about talking to me. As much love as I can exude.
That's before they met you, right?
Yeah. Or even once they meet you, I think it's hard sometimes. You meet somebody for a few moments and you think, oh yeah, I'm making that connection, and but there's a indoctrination, a structure in that person's mind, a comfort level of what they're used to. Sometimes you can't believe it. I know the paradigm's a strong word, but sometimes it seems like it's outside of someone's paradigm that someone could really, really care about you. And I think when you were talking about the conversation, and we act as though it doesn't matter, that it does matter. And you talked about welcoming the stranger. I love welcoming the stranger. I use a lot of your work. There's another work I use a lot from the Center for Ethical Leadership called Gracious Space. And they talk about welcoming the stranger. And boy, am I practicing that all the time. I would love to say, I do love people, but sometimes people will say something or do something, and automatically I have a very fiery judgment, and I'll go, whoa, wait, I'm not welcoming the stranger. I'm putting the stranger in a box. I'm going to tell the stranger what they need to study to open their mind so that they can be right in my mind. All that's happening in here. Luckily, it stays in here mostly. It doesn't come out here as much as it used to, but it's something that takes practice to welcome what's different. I love that you say you welcome what's different. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking about one of the things that's really concerning to me. The United States Air Force is not immune to the increased suicide rate of young people. Something that it really impacts me. And I talk about it, and I talk about it with a lot of people and I meet so many people who've been impacted, either having ideation, knowing someone who had ideation, knowing someone who succeeded, being a leader of a squadron and losing a member. All these things, it's devastating. And how do we have these conversations with each other? And how do we have these conversations with ourselves when strange feelings come up? When feelings come up that just devastating feelings, feelings that you have to mask, that you have to cover, that feel so strange. I think that's another really important reason why conversations are critical, and connections critical, because we can feel so alone.
I think part of what you bring to your institution is a space for people to talk about things that aren't usually talked about. Like one of my best clients ever was Philip Morris Cigarette Company. And my friends wouldn't go there with me. They felt it was evil. And I thought, this is where I belong, I always liked getting invitations from unexpected places. And the conversation they couldn't have was how do they feel about working for a cigarette company? And what we did is they couldn't even tell their friends who they worked for sometimes. And so every institution carries a certain amount of shame. And what you're doing as learning and development voice advocate is saying, we can talk about suicide and just talk about it, not diagnose it, not analyze it, not try to explain it, not have a program for it. Everything you have a program for, you make stronger the very thing you're trying to get rid of. If you're committed to drugs, then declaring war on it is a good way to make sure it survives and does well. If you're committed if you want poverty to stay around, let's have a war on poverty, and you begin your conversation by explaining that the company you work for, number one priority is to avoid violence. And what you're saying is that if we can get people inside talking about other forms like suicide, that's amazing. And to not judge it or condemn it. And that's why the conversation to me, and to me, certain conversations are more powerful than others. What you gave as an example yesterday was the more personal we get, the more connected we get. But then there's other conversations like, what's the crossroads we're at? What's the evil that I'm engaged with now? What's the no? One of my favorites, what's the yes I no longer mean? Leave me the hell alone. What do you mean, yes I know? I meet my commitments. I'm an Air Force commander. I meet my commitments. Comma, eye contact. Right. Now answer the damn question. What's the yes you no longer mean? And what you're doing is you're humanizing. I don't care where we're working. Whether it's, I mean, an oil company, really? When people wouldn't work with me, with Philip Morris, they were working for DuPont making Agent Orange. I thought, okay. And so I like being in Philip Morris. I like welcoming evil, the conversation about it as a response to it. The other thing I love there that you evoked in me is Ken Murphy and I wanted to hold a workshop with no outcomes. Let's hold a workshop where we promise people nothing useful will be discussed in this 6-session workshop.
Yeah.
And it took us 2 years to have the nerve to offer it. We thought we'd be kicked out of the core, okay? And finally we offered it, and within 3 days, 50 people signed up. And at the end of that workshop, we had poets come in, we had priests come in, we had women, nuns come in who ran medical systems. I had a philosopher come in. We taught them improv. And at the end, I would say, how was the workshop? And they said, thank God, nobody asked me at the end, what am I going to do with what I learned here?
Yeah.
It's everything I go to, they ask me the question to manage trainer anxiety. And I'm tired of making lists that have no meaning to me, because out of comfort and gratitude for the person to put up with me and so that's what you're playing with. And what you're saying is the conversation with certain ones, especially ones that are more curiosity than they are judgment. And you're learning to pause. I'm learning that too. You wouldn't know it by listening to me, but when it comes to things that trigger me, I'm just learning to pause. And we're also learning to pause in our sessions. So halfway between every session, you have to stop and say, are you getting what you came for? And when I ask you, are you getting what you came for? I'm treating you as a player, as a citizen, not a consumer. I've never asked anybody anymore, could you please give me feedback on the workshop you just attended? Why? It's too late. It's over. It's history. I ask them halfway through, whether we do today or not, I don't know. We don't walk our talk, we talk our talk. But so you find these little things that embody how do you humanize wherever you are. And so in my small group mentioned that, asynchronous living is dehumanizing. And what most of us long for is synchronous connection. And you're telling me the way to defend our country is to help people get personal.
Yes.
Wow. You are crazy, but there's nothing wrong with you.
I love that outcomes. We talk, of course, a lot about outcomes. And we talk about this thing called ROI, but I've changed the I instead of return on investment. I like to think about return of impact. And so when you think about spending this hour together, possibly there are no outcomes, but I'm already feeling impacted. I'm already feeling different things. And we have a mission impact. And so I don't want us to get mired down in the arguments over resources. And it has kind of, I see it in our organization. We're in a new space of reorganizing the Air Force. The first time we've done it in 40 years. Our command is, after the first of the year, we'll have a new name. And we're going to have some new centers that are going to help to enable us. One of them is an enterprise learning engineering center. So when we were kind of thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to stand up this center? And the first thing the team talked about, how much money do we have and how much people? I said, well, you don't even know what you're doing. How could you answer the question of how much money and how many people? But that's just the narrative. I think people have
They have it.
they've been tasked so much to do things with nothing that now they're guarded about agreeing or making a promise or a commitment to something without knowing that they will be supported in doing that. And so there's a little bit of trauma there that we're
There's
talking
trauma.
through. Yeah. And
The
kind of
trauma
figuring
is the appeal is measurable.
out.
Doesn't mean it's meaningful. Most things measurable are not that meaningful.
Right.
And KPIs, ROIs, all that kind of performance language has me on a stage. All right. And they're more focused on their audience than they are on their behavior, on their outcome. And why do they put up with you, Wendy? I don't know. Do you get by on enthusiasm? I mean, you're such a radical. You're telling them, forget about ROI, stop talking about budget, stop talking about goals and measurable outcome. Can we talk about whether we're going to make a difference or not, please? And they tolerate you.
It's a very wonderful environment. I think I want to just be clear that I am interested in measurement. I am interested in my own continuous growth and knowing the gifts. Like I said, we have such a giant force that sometimes it is hard to know each one on as the individual. And we work towards that, to having a diffuse net-centric environment. But our structure is military. It's hierarchical, it's linear. So it's been very hard to devise systems to really see the gifts of each individual person. So we have been collectively thinking about how can we measure the gifts of each person? What would those?
Are you measuring or are you knowing? See, to measure it means, what are you going to do? Rank them on a 7-point scale? You're going to do 360-degree feedback and then anonymous? No, I don't know anything about what you're doing, but I'll bet on that you're helping people know who each other are, know what their gifts are.
Right.
But then you say measure it, it gets kind of funny, you know. But we live in a real world, and you think you're structured. Well, everybody, you think Accenture, McKinsey. As soon as you said we reorganized, I wonder what consulting firm did they bring in to help them do that?
We've been trying to I've been really focused on the people, and you had asked, how are they putting up with me? The generals that I work with have been incredibly supportive. Never in my career have I been
What
in a
is it
place
they're
where
supporting?
they're
What is it?
they're supporting the idea of a human-centered approach to achieving our
Period.
mission. So our
Yes,
mission
period.
command is really focused on humans, but we know every single bolt on an airplane. We know where to order it. We know how long it will last. We know every single thing about the platforms. But when it comes to the people, we don't know. We don't know what gifts the people have. And so our command is the development command. It's about the people. So I think you're right about the knowing, but we're figuring out how do we create systems or ways of knowing that we can convey that to other people, that the individual can convey to you. I know this. I feel confident in this. I've done this, and I'm good at this, and I want to keep doing this.
The methodology is available.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you.
But
the only thing I do that's clear to me is I break people into small groups. Okay? And I don't care if it's 20 people, 100 people, 500 people. And I know if I break them into groups of 3 or 4 today and ask them to be personal with each other, that at the end of 12 minutes, if I say what struck you, they will say, well, I'm no longer crazy. I no longer as alone as I was. I felt I knew these three other people. And how long did it take? 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you say, Peter, how long does it take for the command structure to get to know the people working for them as you 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes if they're cautious, maybe 35 minutes if they're scared of difference in hierarchy. We know how to do that. The question is, how do you breathe that in to the habits that all of us got the first day we were in school? I didn't learn command structure when I went to the Air Force. I learned it in the first grade.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher said, okay, line up, and started grading me. And I learned in the first grade that my job was to defeat the people who used to be my friends.
Oh.
And so I love what you said. You said, well, why do they put up with me? Because they realize I'm humanizing the world that they care deeply about. And these commanders care enough about their world to put up with your humanizing instinct, and that's pretty amazing. And I am just touched by your falling in love with them.
Oh.
And you did not pick an easy place. Okay. And none of us did. People that worked for Philip Morris, and they cared about the place though. People work at the CIA invited me in. And I went to Langley with a blindfold on. I never felt so valued in my life that they thought that I might see something that could be dangerous. And at lunchtime, they took the notes they took from my morning session and put them under lock and key so nobody would steal them. And I thought, finally, people value what I have to say. It's worth fighting. But the point is, wherever we are, it's hard. It's hard. And you're so clear, beautifully clear, that you're bringing humanity. And then you find to do it. And you said, I'm trying to find a way to do this that they will understand. So that sentence is powerful. Yes, that's my work. All of our work is how do we help people we've chosen to be with? Strangers, tall, command, vice presidents, and find a language that they can kind of get what they came for.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this going, Wendy? How's this going for you? We're halfway through.
It's going great.
If you were explaining to a friend what this first hour was like for you, what would you say? Suppose you called up these guys you had dinner with last night.
Yeah.
You say, what would you say to a friend about this hour?
I think I would say, I hope I'm representing all of the beauty and possibility that's around me, as well as all of the challenges and strife that's around me. I hope that I'm representing the community that I have been given the privilege of being a member of.
If you were misrepresenting them, what form would it take?
I think they might think, I think sometimes I have a habit of looking for the good all the time. And so
Really?
I feel that I look for it because it'll get bigger if I keep looking for it. And sometimes there are places in our human lives that are really tragic. And there is that space where it's so important to be in that space too with people. There's a very strong connection of being there too. And so I'm very joyful. And I feel when I actually was recruited for this job and I was trying to send them other people's resumes that I thought would be better for this job. And so my initial reaction was
that's how you sell?
Pardon?
You sell by promoting people other than yourself. Clever.
It wasn't intended to be clever. I really wanted the Air Force to get the very best person for the job. And I was concerned that coming from outside of this community that I would have such a huge learning curve. I still don't know a lot of what happens in the Air Force, and I'm learning every single day. And thank goodness there's so many amazing people that will help share with me the realities of the organization, what they're doing, what the challenges are, what the possibilities are. But that's how smart the Air Force is. They wanted somebody different, somebody who could see what they weren't seeing. And I think that's partially why they've been so welcoming, because they're hungry. They're hungry for community. They're hungry for building belonging. They're hungry for this.
Yes, they all are. They are, especially since we have, you know, I also think that what you said, you're worried that you don't see the evil, the woundedness also. And that is most healed when it's not tried to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Or put a positive, say, oh no, it's, you know, one door opens, another closes.
Yes.
And, you know, it's the crouch before the leap. Don't feel so bad.
Yeah.
But to see somebody suffering and for what it is and how they experience it without trying to do anything about it is about as loving as we get. And I know that when you're having dinner with these people, you're that also. Otherwise, it's just a strange view of our humanity. Our humanity is given as much expression by our suffering and our vulnerability. If you say, how do you get people? You want command officers to get to know their people, be vulnerable with each other. 15 minutes, and they say thank you.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to sell it that way. Anyway, you also said something as we were beginning a while ago, that these are public servants.
Mm-hmm.
And you made comment that it's hard for public servants to feel valued and appreciated. Say a little bit more about what it means to you to be a public servant and what's that like?
It's a great honor to be in the job that I'm in. Throughout my whole career, I've been in public service. I started working at a state hospital in California. That's when I very first met you. And we went to the Marconi Center, and you and Meg Wheatley were there. And it's incredible to be a public servant because you're doing jobs that many times industry can't make a buck at. They're hard jobs.
That's a great point.
And and you really do have to work hard to be the best that you can be, to be creative, to be strong, to be focused.
Yeah.
And I think your book Stewardship, you know, the concept of Robert Greenleaf's servant leadership, you know, how you can be of service. All my work that I'm doing is for a greater good, not for me to make money. The better I do, the more money I don't make. The better I do, the better it is for the job I'm doing for the state.
That's a great point, Wendy. I never thought of it, that the public service is the uncommercialized space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's so much pressure to privatize the public domain.
That's right.
And try to turn it into a commercially attractive venture, which is not evil, but it's not the same as public service. And and even some of the military has been privatized, but not you. You know, I'm wondering if we should stop for Maya and break into small groups or something. What do you think?
That. Yes.
Yes, thank you guys. Great conversation. And it's about that time for us to, we do want to give you a chance to have a breakout, to maybe answer the question that Peter posed. Are you getting what you came for? Or perhaps what is a crossroads that you may find yourself at now based on what you've heard today? Has something led you to think about things differently? So we'll send you into breakouts for about 10 minutes, give you a chance to visit again. And then when you come back, we'll open up this space. If any of you have any specific questions, you know, for Peter or for Wendy, we'll give time for that as well. So Maya, if you'd like to open up the rooms for about 10 minutes, that'd be great. Great, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. think we've got everyone back. I hope you enjoyed your breakout rooms and your conversations. So as you're returning, just like prior, our first breakout, curious, what struck you in your conversations or any reflections on the time you spent together in your breakout rooms? Anybody like to share? Feel free to raise your hand or just unmute your line. Jenny, I saw your hand raised. Hi, Jenny.
I would say what I loved about the group I was just in is we all have this feeling we just want more humanness back in the workplace and in the learning and development world. Like we don't want to say yes anymore to supporting those KPIs and that kind of structure that really does not honor and I think respect the humans that are in the workplace that want to feel connection to what they do and to each other. So that really struck me, and it was heartening to hear that others are feeling that same way.
Thank you, Jenny. Anyone else?
Somebody go third. Nobody wants to go second.
There's Kirsten. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi. I think what struck me in this conversation and in the first one, which is kind of the obvious thing, but really that connection that is there instantly, without having to, you know, cover the fluff and the small talk. And with that connection, the resonance in our experience, even though our personal experiences are so different and we're both talking about different things, but there is that resonance over presence and allowing things to emerge and unfold rather than sort of grabbing hold and controlling and, you know, putting a pin in it and this is where we're going kind of thing. And, you know, to me, that is just such a natural human thing that in day-to-day life, we often don't get to share and fully live and express. So that was really valuable.
Thank you for sharing.
It took 10 minutes.
Amazing. Anyone else like to share? Lenny, is it Lenny? Did I say, are you raising your hand? Did I say that right?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes. I actually was in the breakout with Kirsten and very inspired and happy to be in there with her in that space. And one of my takeaways from all this is as a facilitator, coach, and aspiring convener in the climate space, wanting to bring people together to cross-fertilize and share and connect and amplify things that are already out there that are being done that could take up a bigger space in the world for all of us. And, you know, my background is in consulting. That's how far back I go to Peter's first book and everything since. And to realize that, to really embody that we are creating the container, a virtual one in many cases. And our job isn't the old facilitator job. It's not even asking questions as much as prompting the conversation, offering a way in. And instead of attachment to outcomes, which is how I was trained as a consultant, it's to foster emergence as well as connection. So people can leave the room and stay connected, and the action takes place afterward. I don't have to be responsible for that. I can't be. Even if we're creating this space for that exchange and connection and cross inspiration to happen there, they don't have to come out with an action plan. You know, they can I can trust them to do that beyond the walls of their virtual room. That's big.
Mhm.
That's amazing what you're saying. You're using the word prompt and foster
Yes.
rather than the word design and measure, predict. And it's funny that you don't call what you did action. So we participate in treating what we do as something on the side. Seems to me that if you had them for 40 minutes and you fostered, prompted them to connect with each other about things that mattered to them, okay? Wasn't that an action step? Why do I have to get cement and nails and screws on an airplane to consider it action? Anyway, it just struck me from what you said. Thank you so much for what you said, saying it, going third.
Yes, thank you.
So Wendy, we've got what, about 6 minutes?
Mhm.
Yes.
Say something. What's striking you? What's this hour and a half meaning for you? And what's the gift you've received or been able to give in our being here?
So many gifts. The last one, the last small breakout we had, I don't know how you say his name, Wasad. If you can help me. Wasam, is that correct? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, great. He was sharing with us about the systems, and how kind of the systems constrain you. And that really ignited a part of my brain that it's been on a slow simmer. That right now, all of us are being called to look at the systems that we're operating in. I was inspired decades ago by Meg Wheatley's book, Leadership in the New Science, who said, hey, the internet showed up and we're a network. That was a while ago. And still, we are dependent on hierarchical linear systems. And we're saying that that's okay, we'll make it work. We are in the Air Force, we're discerning our budgets 5 years from now. We're making our case for what's going to be happening 5 years. We didn't know 5 years ago how artificial intelligence might impact learning. The world, the net-centric world is evolving faster. And so really looking at how do we create and see the dynamicism of systems? How do we take ownership of that and say we need to do things differently? We're making new ways of engaging happen. Whether it's I love the power of these small groups. I love you keep calling out. That was 10 minutes. That was 15 minutes. We could do it in 30 minutes. I love that. You know what? That would really resonate with our generals. They love things to happen quickly. And I do
This is a way
too.
of this is accelerating connection.
Yeah.
You said that you're reorganizing the Air Force, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering whether anything will really be different in the
Oh,
domains
yeah.
that we're considering,
So,
about people's connection, about their titles, about their levels. Be interesting to see whether it's a more humanized institution with
yes.
the structure. But
You
don't answer
mentioned,
it. It's just hold the question. Any other
I'm,
thoughts you have?
I'm trying, I'm holding.
I know, it's not easy. Anyway, thank you so much for what you're doing. And all of you, we're all working in places that are
Yes.
not easy. And you chose path with the work you're doing that's not easy. And it's not easy because it doesn't meet the traditional criteria of measurability, predictability. And yet there's something there that keeps us faithful.
Yeah.
I'm not terribly hopeful, but I am faithful. I know anything's possible. That's why being around someone like you, Wendy, is like a pause, Peter, pause. All right. Anyway, What a joy, Wendy. Thank you so much. I know we're about out of time. Let me hand it back to you, Beverly, and see how you want to finish.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Wendy, just is there anything that you would like to perhaps leave the group with? Anything that you might have liked to have shared, didn't have a chance to, the last few minutes that we have with each other?
Well, Peter asked me to hold it. He said, hold it. So
I know I'm gonna give you a
Yeah.
chance to let go for
I do
for a
not
couple
walk
minutes.
my talk, okay? I write
Yeah.
books, I don't have to live them.
Just one thing, I'm very curious about all the things that people are doing. I would love to connect. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you come up with a question later, or you'd like to talk more about something, I'm game for that. I'm interested. The thing I wanted to mention that's different, how are we reorganizing differently, is that we're looking at kind of the life cycle of things. In government, Peter had said, he said, don't create a program for it, because that will, kill it. That will not get you the outcomes that you want. If you build a program around it, that's the death of it. And I don't disagree, but I'm interested in building enabling structures. So the Center of Excellence that we're building is intended to have a life cycle, to be aligned to a mission, to a common goal for enabling the healing of our systems, to be more net centric, to really recognize the human-centered aspect of it, to really provide space for interdisciplinarity, giving ourselves no longer than 7 to 10 years, which is a long time, but very short in government. And that people know that when they come into the organization, to the center, that they're working towards achieving the goal of it, then healing a system, not sustaining another organization. And so that's one thing that we're reimagining. And I think that that's what I wanted to kind of leave us with, is how can we imagine new systems and structures that will enable these approaches that we know work, rather than working around, or let's recreate, reimagine. I think the time is now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wendy. And thank you everyone for being here today and sharing your time with us. We've typed into, Maya has shared in the chat a link to Wendy's LinkedIn page. So feel free to connect with her. Also, feel free to stay in touch with us at Design Learning. I appreciate everyone being here today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day or evening, no matter where you're calling in from. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good to
Thank
see you
you.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Do we stay for a minute?
We can.
Anybody wants to stay with us, you're welcome to.
Welcome. Mike
Hi,
Run.
John. Nice to see you.
Hi, John.
I miss you,
I want to say
John.
goodbye. I
I
want to say
know.
goodbye.
I don't want
Okay.
to say goodbye to you. Let's get together.
Thank you, John.
Take care. I'll be in touch.
Okay, really.
Well, thank you so much, Wendy, for saying yes and joining our group today. It was wonderful.
Thank you. This was really a delight. It was a high point of my day and surely my week. So thank you.